The sound hit first, brittle plastic scraping across tile. I looked down. The present in my son's hands had a crack running through the side, a faded sticker peeling off a wheel. Someone had wiped dust off it with a damp paper towel and called it new. Across the room, gold balloons floated above a pyramid of brand new boxes. Tablets, a gaming console, sneakers still wearing their price tags. Each ribbon tagged with my brother's kids' names. "Go on, sweetie," I whispered to my boy. "Say thank you." He lifted his chin the way 7-year-olds do when they're trying not to cry. "Thank you, Grandma." His voice was small, the kind of small you feel in your own throat. Mom didn't look at him. She was busy fitting a bow onto a drone for my nephew. "He should be lucky we even remembered him," she said, loud enough to carry. My brother laughed from the couch, one arm slung over the back like he owned the room. "Don't be dramatic, Lena. It's a toy. People who don't see you will always call your hurt dramatic. I've never liked introducing myself in rooms where I'm only useful. But I'll say it now, I'm Lena. The one who brings the extra folding chairs. The one who Venmos early for shared gifts and never asks to be paid back. The one who saved for years. A quiet, careful stack, for a down payment and a small emergency fund." My phone buzzed in my pocket. $4,800 debit. Family share savings. Memo, Grandkids, special day balloon. I blinked like the words might rearrange themselves into something sane. Family share. The account I'd set up years ago when Dad lost a contract and we promised, no one drowns alone. I'd kept it alive, feeding it in little bites. They had my login from back then. I hadn't changed it. Trusting felt easier than explaining. I stared at the memo again. My emergency turned into fireworks and tablets. My son turned into an afterthought with a cracked car that rattled when he pushed it. "Lena." Mom finally met my eyes. "Don't sulk. You know we always do more for the ones who show up." She nodded toward my brother's family, arranged perfectly in their matching outfits, like a commercial for happiness. I looked at my boy. He was turning the broken wheel gently, trying to make it catch. He kept trying because that's who we are, people who try until something in us learns not to. "Smile," my brother said, lifting his phone. "Family photo." I did. I smiled like a woman cataloging exits. There's a temperature that comes right before ice. Air so clean it stings. I felt it slide through me as the shutter clicked. And in that cold I quietly decided, they will never spend me again. I didn't say a word during cake. My son sat beside me, pressing his fork into the frosting like he was digging for treasure but not really wanting to find it. Across the table my nephew tore into his third gift, a GoPro, while my niece squealed over a limited edition doll. Every cheer felt like a pin in my skin. "Lena, you're so quiet," Mom said, licking frosting from her thumb. "Don't be a buzzkill. This is a celebration." Her tone wasn't an invitation, it was a warning. "Smile or you'll ruin the picture." I leaned back in my chair and let my eyes roam. The living room was packed. Neighbors, family, friends, people who had no idea they were sitting inside a hierarchy. To them this was just a big happy family. They didn't see the ledger I saw. What was given, what was taken, who was worth the trouble and who wasn't. Dad caught my eye from the recliner. He gave me a slow shake of the head as if to say don't start. But he didn't offer to give back the money either. The savings I'd been building for years wasn't just numbers. It was my insurance against being at their mercy. I'd pictured it paying for a new place if rent ever jumped, or covering a surgery, or letting me breathe for a few months if I lost work. Now it was scattered under wrapping paper and balloons. My brother walked past carrying empty plates, brushing my shoulder like we were close. "Hey," he said with that lazy grin, "don't be bitter. The kids are kids. Your boy's fine. Besides," his eyes flicked to my son, "he's not exactly into fancy stuff, is he?" Kept my face still. If I spoke, I knew my voice would either break or cut too clean. Later, while everyone was distracted with party games, I slipped into the hallway and pulled my phone from my purse. I opened the banking app, scrolling through the withdrawal details. It wasn't just one transfer, it was three. 3 separate days they dipped in, building this little festival of favoritism. My son found me there. "Mom." He held the broken car in one hand, the wheel finally snapped off. "Can we go home?" I crouched, meeting him at eye level. "Yeah, baby. We can." We walked through the living room without goodbyes. Mom called after me, "You're leaving already?" I turned just enough to see her over my shoulder. I think you've had enough of me for one day. The room went quiet the way it does when someone tips a glass and everyone waits to see if it will spill. It already had. And I was done cleaning it up for them. The drive home was short but silence stretched it thin. My son sat in the back, the broken toy in his lap like a little coffin for something he'd never had. Street lights slid across his face, catching the moment his mouth turned down, not from crying but from thinking. I knew that look. I'd worn it my whole childhood. When we got inside, I locked the door and tossed my keys into the bowl. Usually I'd text Mom to say we got home safe. Tonight my phone stayed in my pocket. I went straight to my desk, opened my laptop and started pulling up accounts. First, my bank. I changed the family share password. Then my personal. New password. Then my PayPal, my Venmo, my retirement app. Every possible window they could crawl through I sealed. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about access. I opened our old family group chat. Messages scrolled back years, photos of my son's first day at school buried between endless threads about my brother's vacations, his kids' sports schedules, his wife's just because gift hauls. My son's milestones had always been footnotes, sandwiched between their headlines. Tonight I left the chat. It took exactly 3 minutes for my phone to ring. Lena? What the hell? My brother's voice was already loud. Mom says you stormed out. Over what? A toy. I leaned back in my chair, letting his outrage run. It wasn't about the toy, I said quietly. Then what? It was about my $4,800. Silence. Then a scoff. Oh come on. You know it's for the family. We do more for the kids who need it. My son needed it, I cut in. And instead you made him watch everyone else unwrap my work. God, you're so sensitive. I hung up. The weight in my chest didn't lift, but it shifted. It was no longer pressing me down. It was anchoring me to a decision. I didn't want revenge that screamed. I wanted something colder. Something that left no room for them to paint me as emotional or overreacting. I wanted them to be seen. Not just by me but by everyone who thought they were the picture of family love. And I already knew exactly where to start. The next morning I woke before my alarm. The house was still dark, but my mind was bright and sharp in that way it gets when anger has cooled into precision. My son was asleep in his room, curled around the broken toy. I took a photo, not of him but of the car. The crack, the dirt under the wheels, the faded sticker half hanging on. I didn't post it right away. Some things need timing, not impulse. Coffee in hand, I pulled out a box from the back of my closet. Inside were years of receipts, statements, and screenshots, proof of every shared contribution I'd made. The time I paid for the beach rental, on behalf of everyone, and no one reimbursed me. The time I covered Mom's dental work in full because she couldn't ask, my brother. The kids' joint birthday gifts, the holiday dinners, the emergency loans that were never mentioned again. Each one was another brushstroke in the portrait of how they used me. By mid-morning I had scanned everything into a tidy folder labeled Family Ledger. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:17 a.m. Mom texted, "You need to come over tonight. We can talk this out. Don't make this bigger than it is." Bigger than it is. They'd already made it big. They just thought they could control who saw it. I replied, "Sure. I'll bring something to show you." That afternoon I picked up my son from school and told him we were stopping by Grandma's. He frowned. "Do I have to go in?" "Not this time," I said. "You can stay in the car." We pulled up just as my brother's SUV turned into the driveway. His wife hopped out carrying a tray of cupcakes. Perfect timing. Inside, the living room was set like a casual peace summit. Mom on the couch, Dad in the recliner, my brother leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Okay," Mom said, motioning for me to sit. "Let's clear the air." I set my laptop on the coffee table and opened the folder. Page by page I slid the receipts and screenshots toward them. "This," I said evenly, "is the air." They flipped through the stack in silence, the bright, bragging energy from yesterday gone flat. My brother laughed once, sharp and defensive. "So you've been keeping score?" "No," I said, closing the laptop. "I've been keeping records. And I think it's time everyone else sees them too." The shift in the room was instant, like they'd heard the click of a lock they couldn't open. And they hadn't yet realized that I meant everyone. I didn't post to my page. That would have been too easy for them to spin as, "Lena's having a breakdown," or she's bitter. Instead, I sent the folder privately, one carefully chosen recipient at a time. I started with the people who'd been at the party but weren't part of our inner circle. A couple of neighbors. A family friend who always bragged about how generous my parents were. My cousin on dad's side, who'd stopped visiting years ago because she said my mom made her feel invisible. No captions. No angry rants. Just the documents, the photos, and the date stamps. Let the timeline tell the story. The first reply came within an hour. Lena? I had no idea. The second, this explains so much. The third was just an emoji, wide eyes, then a broken heart. By evening, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Not from them, but from people who'd seen enough to piece together the truth. The text I'd been expecting finally came from my brother. What the hell are you doing? I didn't answer. At 8:42 p.m. Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. The message was exactly what I knew it would be, a polished mix of guilt-tripping and soft threats. Lena, this is family business. We don't air things like this. You're hurting your father. You're hurting yourself. Stop before you can't take it back. But she didn't say I was lying. The next morning I walked my son to school. As we crossed the parking lot, a voice called from behind me. Mrs. Keating, the principal who'd been at the party because she's friends with my sister-in-law's cousin. That toy, she said softly. Was that really from them? I nodded once. Her mouth tightened. Your boy deserves better. The thing about showing people the truth is, they don't forget it. Once you've seen the shape of something ugly, it's hard to unsee. By the third day, the ripple had reached places I hadn't expected. Old friends from church. Dad's business contacts. Even my brother's in-laws. The family's image, that perfect, generous, always there for each other facade, was starting to fray. And the best part? I hadn't said a single cruel word. I'd simply given their real reflection to the people who'd always been shown the portrait. But I wasn't finished. Because the final step wasn't just about them being seen. It was about my son being remembered, in a way they could never undo. Saturday morning, I drove past my parents' street without stopping. The curtains were drawn, both cars in the driveway. I imagined the mood inside. Quiet but not restful, the kind of silence that comes after everyone has said too much and still nothing has been resolved. My son and I had plans. Real ones. We went to the park first, the one with the fountain he likes because it sounds like the ocean. Then we stopped at a toy store I'd been avoiding for months because I kept telling myself to wait for a special occasion. This was it. Pick anything, I told him. His eyes widened, scanning the shelves, but he didn't rush. He chose a bright red remote control truck. Brand new, still smelling of factory paint and cardboard. No cracks. No missing wheels. When we got home, I set the box on the kitchen table. He started tearing it open, then stopped. Can we take a picture for Grandma? He asked, not in hope, just out of habit. I crouched beside him, meeting his eyes. We don't have to share everything with everyone, I said. Sometimes it's just ours. He smiled, the first real one since the party. That afternoon I wrote an email. The subject line was simple. Notice of account closure. It went to every adult in the family. Inside, I explained that the family share account no longer existed, that my contributions had ended, and that any requests for help would need to be directed elsewhere. I didn't sign it with love. Just my name. Within an hour, my phone lit up again. Calls, messages, a voicemail from Dad asking, "Is this really necessary?" It was. Later, while my son played in the yard, I uploaded one final photo to a private album and sent the link to the same circle who had seen the ledger. This time it wasn't documents. It was my boy, sitting in the grass with his new truck, the sun lighting his hair, his laugh frozen midair. The caption was just 5 words. Every child deserves this joy. No mention of who had failed him before. No accusation. But the contrast was impossible to miss. By evening, I heard from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Proud of you for doing this. I didn't respond right away. I stood at the window watching my son run the truck through the dirt, its wheels catching sunlight. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was reacting to them. I was building something without them in it. And they were finally starting to feel the absence. Sunday lunch used to be a family ritual. My parents' table crowded with plates and noise. This week, the chairs sat empty in their dining room. I know because my cousin sent me a photo. She'd been invited over last minute to fill space, as she put it. My brother's kids were there, but the smiles looked forced. Mom's face was pale, her hands busy arranging bread rolls that no one was eating. The ripples were hitting harder now. Dad's business partner, who'd been one of the recipients of my folder, had called him the night before. "It's bad optics," he'd said, according to my cousin. "You can't preach generosity at fundraisers and treat your own blood like this." I hadn't planned for that, but I wasn't sorry either. That afternoon, my brother finally broke the streak of missed calls with a text. "You've made your point." So, my point? We weren't even close. Because up until now, this had been about showing people the truth. But the final act was about ensuring they couldn't rewrite it. I opened a new email, this time addressed to the family group's wider circle. Aunts, uncles, second cousins, even my late grandmother's best friend who still sent Christmas cards. The subject line read, "For the record." Instead I wrote, "This is not a plea. It's not a fight. It's a record, so no one can say they didn't know. My savings were taken without my consent and used to fund a celebration where my son was handed a broken, discarded toy. My concerns were met with laughter and dismissal. This is not love. This is not family. And I won't participate in it anymore." I attached the same ledger, the same photos, the same quiet proof. Then I hit send. By evening, my cousin messaged, "Your email's being talked about in every corner of this family." And not the way they thought. That night, my son crawled into my lap while I was on the couch. "Are they still mad?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "But that's not our job to fix." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "Okay." The TV flickered in front of us, but I wasn't watching. I was thinking about the moment tomorrow, Monday morning, when the part they feared most would happen. The moment when the story would no longer belong just to the family. The moment it would belong to the whole town. Monday morning was crisp, the kind of air that makes you feel like something is about to happen. And it was. I left my son at school, kissed his hair, and drove straight to the community center. The bulletin boards, there were a mix of lost pet flyers, church announcements, and charity events. I'd reserved a small corner last week, just enough space for 3 laminated sheets. On the first, a photo of the broken toy. On the second, the ledger summary, dates, amounts, withdrawals. On the third, a photo of my son from the park, grinning with his new red truck, the caption in bold. "Every child deserves this joy." No names. No accusations. Just the truth laid bare for anyone who cared to see the pattern. By noon, my phone lit up with a message from my brother. "You put this in public?" I didn't answer. At 1:15 p.m. Mom called, her voice breaking in ways I'd never heard. "People are asking questions. Your father's, he's embarrassed. Please, Lena, take it down." I sat in my parked car outside the library, the sunlight spilling across the dashboard. "I can't erase what happened," I said calmly. "But you can choose how you act next." She didn't reply. 2 days later, I got a card in the mail. No signature, just handwriting I recognized instantly. Dad's. Inside was a folded check for the exact amount they'd taken, down to the penny. A sticky note was attached for him. I deposited it without a thank you. This wasn't about debt repayment. This was about them standing in the shadow of their own choices, unable to pretend the light was still flattering. That weekend, my son and I went to the beach. We built a sandcastle big enough to bury the broken car in. He laughed when I told him the tide would take it far away. And for the first time in months, I felt no weight in my chest, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing the story didn't end with us as the invisible ones. They had wanted the world to see them as generous. Now the world saw them exactly as they were.